Today, the Cincinnati Reds did something that most teams in the lower third of payroll should be doing. What did they do? They made an attempt to improve their team.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to a Locked On MLB, Locked On Reds Crossover. This is the podcast where we talk about all of Major League Baseball or just your 2026 National League champion Cincinnati Reds all season long, and we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcasting network. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called these days on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball Podcast Instagram. And if you're going to leave a message here or any of the sites, what you should do is use that hashtag #EverydaySully. But if you've been listening closely, I know I have, it is time to realize that I am not flying solo. It's Everyday Sully. Yes, we heard it the first time. We know I'm not flying solo today. We're talking Reds. He is the Tony Randall of this show. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone gets that reference, bless you. It's Jeff Carr. How you doing, buddy?
Sully, I appreciate you having me on. Can we start with the division first before we start getting the Dodgers antenna up with the Reds right now? I'm good with just the NL Central to start.
All right. Well, that's good. But if we're going to talk about the Reds right now, I think the biggest fear that Reds fans have regarding a looming lockout is that the chances of a back-to-back title in Cincinnati are really going to be hampered with a prolonged lockout. And the Reds are angry that they are no longer the most recent National League team to win it back-to-back. So they've got to win in 26 and 27. And I think the signing today got them about as close. And the question I need to ask you is it bad for baseball that the Reds are just buying all the major players? I mean, what is happening here?
I think for teams like the Brewers and the Cubs and the Pirates and the Cardinals, you've just really got to feel for them because they're going out there every single day, pulling up their bootstraps, trying to make their teams better. Well, okay, maybe not the Cardinals, and spending all the money that they pot. Okay, maybe not the Pirates, and really trying to build a championship. Okay, the Brewers are trading everybody away too, but at least the Cubs are signing Alex Bregman. So I really feel like this has been the move that the Cincinnati Reds have needed all offseason. Quite frankly, they needed all last year as well. But they finally did the thing. They finally got the guy to put in the middle of their lineup that everybody's going to worry about. And you can put him right behind Elly De La Cruz, give him some lineup protection. And now we can really start to see this thing click because pitching's the name of the game in Cincinnati. If you can just score a couple of runs, you're good. And they've set up real well to do that now.
So let's bring everyone up to speed. Eugenio Suarez, Eugenio Suarez. Am I pronouncing it right?
Eugenio Suarez.
Eugenio, because I pronounce it differently almost every time.
Just like Joe Zarahew's an RPA guy.
Amen. He is go over this signing because he's a former Red as well, and then he wandered through the desert and then found himself in the Northwest, and he is now back with Cincy, a team, as you mentioned, has very good pitching. And lest we forget, they pitched themselves right into the playoffs last year, bottom third in payroll, and they got into the postseason, leaving the Mets, who I believe had the highest payroll, if not the second highest payroll, and they were playing canasta, while the Reds, granted, their time in the postseason wasn't long, but for a young team with a new manager, getting that experience and say, no, this year wasn't a lost year. We played some October games. And now, listen closely, Marlins, because this is an amazing thing they did. They've made an attempt to keep the team together and buckle in, improve. So tell people what the Suarez signing means to this lineup.
Yeah, he's a 1 year with a mutual option for a second year. I don't know what the value is on that, but it's a $15 million signing for the Reds. There were a lot of outlets that had him over $20 million per year in at least 3 or 4 years, and they get him on the cheap on a 1 year deal. the kind of deal that I feel like there had to be some sort of draw for him to return, but they're getting a guy that just hit 49 bombs in Arizona and Seattle. Welcome to Great American Launching Pad. Like, he's going to have a lot of fun. And he hit 49 bombs back in 2019 as a Cincinnati Red as well. So you don't have to squint really hard to see him repeating his production from last season. And that slugging percentage and even his isolated power of 298, which was his career best, but his career mark, like his entire career isolated power, 218, which is slugging percentage minus batting average. It's an attempt to just isolate all of the extra base hits and say how good a player is. There was no regular Reds hitter that was over 200 in isolated power last year. So you're talking about a clear upgrade for a lineup that, even though it wasn't bad, it wasn't good either. Like, they averaged 4.42 runs per game, just a little bit below league average. They were right in the middle with batting average, right in the middle with on-base percentage, below average in slugging percentage. So they just added a guy that increased the profile and the thing that they needed the most. And I really feel like this solidifies the lineup as a whole, because you were kind of squinting to see who was going to be their cleanup hitter before this move.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obvious. You slot him in number 4, game 1 through 162, and Lord willing, further than 2 games into the playoffs, I'm going to feel really good about this lineup.
And one of the nice thing is that if you're a Reds fan, and I know you are, you're not asking him to be your third baseman. You're not asking anyone who wants to throw, and you talked about this on the latest episode of Locked On Reds, but you're not asking for his glove. You have Ke'Bryan Hayes. Ke'Bryan Hayes, look, for all of his faults, he's an excellent defender. Yes. And you're not asking him to play that. You may ask him to play some first base, but the main thing you're doing is saying, you're here to hit, which is what I wanted the Red Sox to do with Rafael Devers, to say, don't leave your glove in the locker. You're here for your bat. And the nice thing is he has been in Cincinnati before. It's not like it's a new place for him. And he is, you're asking to do one thing, and that's mash. And you also, for those of you who don't follow the Reds very closely, and some of you don't, you have Hunter Greene. You have Andrew Abbott. You have Nick Lodolo. You have a starting staff, which is, especially after the trade of Freddie Peralta, I would say is as good as, is the best in the National League Central, even though one team has Paul Skeens, and the Brewers do have very good, even without Peralta, the Brewers do have good pitching, and the Cubbies do have good pitching, and the Cardinals did before they traded all the way. There is good pitching in this division, but I think the Reds have very deep pitching, and they have a Hall of Fame manager.
Their top 4 starters last year, Sully, combined for 108 starts. The Reds had won 56% of those games. So if they can just give the Reds 120 starts, they could just repeat the performance that they had last year, which I know is not a given. But if they can get 120 starts out of Hunter Greene, Andrew Abbott, Nick Lodolo, and Brady Singer, they could win 68 ball games just with their top 4. And so whoever pitches the other 42 ball games in this group just has to go 500 in those 42 games. And it just got a lot easier by making the lineup better. Because you're right, the DH thing is what they're going to ask Eugenio Suarez to do. They said that there's going to be a little bit of first base, a little bit of third base, but they've also got Spencer Steer who can do that, who was a Gold Glove finalist at first base last year. But he's going to play some left field as well, because their left field situation is a little bit of a mess, but this makes this look a little bit easier. And then you've got Sal Stewart, who, albeit was only up for a month last year, but showed a ton of promise and has slimmed down 26 pounds in the offseason and can play second base. So he can play first, second, and third. So they've got a couple of guys that can really move around, and you can alleviate the lineup black hole that has become Ke'Bryan Hayes. If he can just be a 90 OPS plus guy, that's all you're asking from him.
And also, you just know you're going to get the quality defense at third base, which allows you to put Suarez away from you. Gold Glove. I mean, you can. That just gives you the peace of mind that you're not even tempted to put him there. And I do think there is something to be said for a young team like this to go through a season and say, yeah, at the end of the year, we went to a playoff series. And you can look everyone in the eye and say, it took the World Series champion to eliminate us. When we come back, the Reds are a playoff team last year. They want to be again. Where does the rest of the division fit right now in this, a very strange division, because the runaway division winner who had the best record in baseball is selling?
Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. And quite frankly, when it comes to hoping, that's exactly what the Reds were doing with the lineup until they got a Eugenio Suarez. They might have used Indeed to get a Eugenio Suarez into town.
He posted a resume there. People
are talking. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will also get $75 in job sponsored credits and help you get your job to the premium status that everyone deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed.
Indeed. Hey, everyone, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB or Locked On Reds your first listen every day. And thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. That's the Locked On Podcast Network. If you haven't done it already, that wasn't a real word I just said. If you haven't done it already, not every gun it already, check out the Everydayer Club. Get ad-free radio of Locked On MLB, Locked On Reds. It is similar to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And I am on the Everydayer Club Discord, and I interact with a lot of fans there. I met some brand new fans who go there and go to you go to the Everydayer Discord as well, right?
I do.
Yeah, you do. You're there too. So check us out. LockedOnMLB.supercast.com. And what is it for the Reds?
LockedOnReds.supercast.com.
Very easy to remember. Okay, so the Brewers, I've made this point before. The Brewers have made moves recently that may look like, are they selling? Why did they give up on Williams? Why did they give up on Adames? Why did they give up on, why am I blanking on his name with the Diamondbacks? He won the Cy Young Award.
Burns.
Thank you, Burns. I almost said Barnes. I almost said Bucky Barnes. And now they've traded away Freddie Peralta. They're like, oh my God, they're selling. And each year they wind up winning 93 to 98 games. So you can't really panic in Milwaukee. The guys they got for Peralta from the Mets are going to the Hall of Fame. That's just all there is to it. But they're also not being aggressive to defend their crown. The Cubs brought in Bregman, solid, but Tucker is gone. So that was more of a lateral move. Tucker, the quality bat that Tucker has is removed, and he replaced him with Bregman. The Cardinals are in full rebuild. The Pirates are panicking because they have a tremendous talent who's already there and has blossomed, and they don't know what to do with that. They can only deal with prospects. And the Reds are a playoff team. Where do the Reds fit? I bet against the Brewers at my own peril. They've tricked us in the past and thinking they're rebuilding, and they wind up getting better. So I'm not writing them off, but this is a move where the Reds struck while the iron is hot. So where do they fit amongst? I can think the Pirates aren't going to win piddly-poo. They did have an interesting offseason, but I don't think they're ready to win piddly-poo. And the Cardinals are in a full rebuild.
For a minute,
where do they fit?
I really thought the Pirates were going to creep up in there. In fact, there were reports after Suarez signed with the Reds that the Pirates made an offer and told him, whatever the Reds say, we will give you more. And he still chose Cincinnati over Pittsburgh. And I think
was that
the Reds,
was that familiarity, you think, that he knew
yes,
what he was getting into Cincinnati? Yeah.
Familiarity. He was a guy that whenever the Reds traded him back in 2022, he said, I thought I was going to play my entire career here, and I would like to finish my career here if I get the opportunity to. Now, I don't think that he's going to retire after this season, so that obviously still is in play, but I digress on that. The whole thing about the division, I think that the Reds are 2B. I think that the Cubs are the favorites. I think that the Brewers are right there with them until proven guilty, and that the Reds are like a half a step behind them, whatever that looks like, until the Reds show that they are ahead of the Brewers. The Brewers have owned the Reds. There's no world that I can sit here and say, yes, I believe that the Reds are better than the Brewers. They haven't been in David Bell's tenure, and obviously not last year either. But I think that there's a chance for the Reds to prove it this year with the way that their roster construction has evolved as opposed to the Brewers. So the question will be, can the Reds outpitch the Cubs lineup? Because that's going to be the matchup that they have to win more times than not, because I think that the Reds lineup has now at least come up to the Cubs pitching staff where they can match up well in those head-to-head games.
You know what? I know people think managers are overrated, and in some cases they are. But I think Francona is a manager that, okay, I'm a native New Englander, and Francona won 2 World Series titles with the Red Sox. So obviously I think he walks on water. He got the Indians one swing away from winning the World Series. Yeah. You know, if Kipnis's drive doesn't hook foul, we maybe, we're still talking Billy Goats here. And if they didn't have, but more to the point, if they didn't have just brutal injuries to their starting pitching staff, Danny Salazar and Carlos Carrasco. I mean, Salazar became a mop-up man, and Carrasco pitched as many innings as I did. If you lost 2 of their key starting pitchers, and they still nearly beat the Cubs. But he took Cleveland to Game 7 of the World Series, and he took the Reds to the playoffs. And there's something when you have a manager who year in and year out gets the best of their players and squeezes the most out of the players, and players are willing to run through a brick wall for them. I think he's one of the few managers that makes a real difference. And you saw it immediately. He comes in and the team's a playoff team. I think one of the things that is the most is you made the great point about how they could match up with Chicago. I really think that if you look at Singer, Abbott, Lodolo, Greene, if those guys can take it to the next level, if those guys can be consent, you mentioned everyone I just mentioned except for Greene pitched, 25 to 30 starts last year. And if Greene can do that for the whole season, then that's I'm really convinced, and I've seen Francona do this when he was able to have Schilling, Pedro, Lowe, Wakefield, Arroyo, and then Beckett, Lester, Buchholz, Wakefield, and then had the staff that had, Trevor Bauer and Corey Kluber and Carrasco and Tomlin. And when you give him a chance to say, every day I'm going to have someone who's going to be about 6 innings, and I'll win it for you. That is a Francona team. Mm-hmm. And that makes me very excited for the Reds' chances. And we saw he was doing that by the end of the year last year. So now he's got a whole year. And he can look Martinez and Abbott and Lodolo and Greene and said, okay, you all pitch in a pennant race. Now we got another hitter in here, and there is no super team in that division. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited that Francona has a big masher in the middle of his lineup. But I really think this Reds team has a legit shot at 90 wins.
The other part about this offseason that has been so transformative for the Reds has been how much they've attacked the bullpen. And to be honest with you, Sully, like up until Sunday, February 1st, most Reds fans would roll their eyes every time you said that to them, because they're like, we know what we need. We need a big bopper in the middle of the lineup. Don't talk to me about the bullpen. But now when you look at the entire picture, they added Pierce Johnson, who has amazing postseason experience and has been a pretty good setup guy for a long time.
Yep.
You have Caleb Ferguson, who's been a really lights out,
very good pitcher. Yep, very good
for
pitcher.
multiple different teams. And you got Brock Burke on the trade where you sent Gavin Lux to Tampa Bay. And Brock Burke's been a very solid left-handed reliever for them and they kept Emilio Pagan. So all of this, I think that the bullpen is very strong. I think that the starting rotation is very strong. So you've got a whole half of the game that you just feel the utmost confidence in. And with the defense that they're going to have all year from Ke'Bryan Hayes, because for much of the season in 2025, they languished with whoever was going to play third base. The best glove at third base was Santiago Espinal until they acquired Ke'Bryan Hayes. That's how much better it got for them. So the left side of the field looks a lot better. Elly De La Cruz is going to get better at shortstop. I firmly believe that defensively. And then Matt McClain is a pretty good second baseman. First base is going to be a mix of an athletic Sal Stewart, a Gold Glove finalist in Spencer Steer, and maybe just a tiny bit of time with a Eugenio Suarez. I feel really good about the ability to prevent runs for the Reds. And now I feel better about their ability to produce runs.
And again, one last thing on Francona before we go to another break, and I bring up my next big point here, is that when it is in his best years as manager with both Boston and with Cleveland, he really knew that it's a balance. A good rotation makes your bullpen better. A good bullpen makes your rotation better. And knowing that, I'm going to push this pitcher one extra inning. And this is the other thing he certainly did with the Red Sox, but he absolutely did it with Cleveland. And that is, he will mix and match the bullpen. He's not interested in the tyranny of the save. Yes, Keith Folk got the majority of the saves are there, and Papelbon did as well. But he will use the right reliever in the right situation. That's why he would use Andrew Miller in the 5th, 6th, 7th, whatever inning. He used Papelbon not always in the 9th inning, or Folk not always in the 9th inning. He goes saying, like, my job isn't to pad your save stats. My job is to go to the right weapon at the right time. And more often than not, he went to the right person. And so when you give him a lot of weapons in the bullpen, that means you have a manager who at least has a history of going to the right one and isn't afraid to say, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to only use this guy in the 7th. I'm supposed to use this guy in the 8th. No, this is when the game requires it. And that, to me, is a huge part of Francona's, success as a manager, and the fact that he seems like he seems like a bud. People love playing. He's like, hey, it's Terry. How can you? It's Tito. Get over here, Tito. And it certainly have worked. He's taken 3 games to the playoffs, 3 teams to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's funny because there was a group of Reds fans that really thought he got too much credit last year, but that was because they were too focused on the tangible. They were too focused on, did he make the right sub at the right time? Did he make the wrong call to the bullpen? Did he make the wrong call here? All this other stuff. The bit that we cannot quantify is the bit that he's so good at, and it's so clear that every single day it affects the Reds in a way that David Bell never could have ever touched.
Yeah. And that's not a knock on David Bell, but this is a guy who's done it. And remember, it's not head coach, it's manager. And that's one thing he does quite well. But when we come back, I want to tell you another reason why baseball fans should take a good long look at what just happened and say, hey, wait a minute. That's not a bad idea. Jeff Cards, guess what I just started doing the other day?
What'd you get?
My taxes. I got my taxes from Locked On. Now, like Shohei, I've deferred most of my money. And because I asked for so much that it was going to basically sink the Locked On Podcast Network. But now that we're the #1 podcast network, you can afford my services. But do you know what? Sometimes taxes are just too much. And sometimes, it kind of takes over your life. Well, don't skip your taxes. Believe me, it's not going to work. Instead, go to TurboTax. TurboTax is making it easier than ever. Just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax, full service, It's like a full-service gas station. You have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Well, that'd be great to hear. Boom, you do it. And they do. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out those forms, go to the library, get this, go there and get that, carry the one, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything. W-2s, self-employed forms, and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, maybe mow the lawn, and get updates right on the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver. It gives you time to listen to more Locked On podcasts and give you real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it. You're not sending it to me. You're not sending it to Jeff. You're sending it to an expert. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150, all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th, and I think I'm going to be able to this year. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. TurboTax. Let them do it. I wonder if they use TurboTax to figure out the luxury tax. That'd be kind of cool.
They might need a couple of different systems to figure that out.
All right, so everyone, just bear with me for a second, because I'm going to make a point. The Cincinnati Reds last year became a great talking point for anyone who wants to say, "Hey, look it, you can contend even if you're not a top 10 payroll." Because in the top 10 payrolls last year, the top one was the New York Metropolitans, who were playing Boggle during the wild card series. You also had the Texas Rangers, who were playing Parcheesi during the wild card series. You had the Houston Astros, who were playing Hungry Hippos during the first round of the playoffs last year. You had the Atlanta Braves, who were playing Battleship during the wild card series. You know what that means, folks? It's not fair. You only paid the most. 40% of the top 10 in payroll missed the playoffs. Not were eliminated early. 40% of the top 10 in payroll didn't make the cut. So, and then you have the Cincinnati Reds and you had the Cleveland Guardians make the playoffs in the bottom third of payroll. Now, it's not saying that payroll doesn't help. I'm not saying that you should be necessarily trying to clip coupons and be the Miami Marlins. But what I am saying is you can win games even if you draft right, you scout right, and everything like that. But here's the deal. When you become a surprise team, and this is why I get mad at the Guardians, because they've been a first place team for a while now, and they're still 25th out of 30 in payroll. Come on, bump your way up to where the Orioles are, like mid, and Cleveland would be a pennant winner. Well, look at what the Reds did. They were 22nd in payroll, and they took a look and they made the postseason. So what did they do? They built on it. Now, they're not going to skyrocket to where the Mets and the Dodgers and the Yankees. The Yankee fans always complain that the Yankees don't spend enough. I just want to make sure we're aware of this. Or Toronto, the Padres are in the top 10 of payroll as well. They're $200 million payroll. Get to the middle. And the Reds are just doing what you should do if you're, I hate to say small market, but they are a smaller market. Mm. And if you are a team where you see this is your window of opportunity, the Reds are seizing upon it. What did they need to do? They need to work out their bullpen. They made a bunch of moves. They weren't all the sexiest moves, but the bullpen moves that really work tend not to be the big sexy moves. They tend to be the ones that it's not always the big, huge closer. It's sometimes the guy who has the talent. Nobody thought Koji Uehara was a big, huge signing when the Red Sox picked him up. And then they said, well, what else do we need? We need a masher. And they got one of the best mashers available. And by the way, someone who loves playing in Cincinnati. So they saw there's a window of opportunity to win right here, right now, and in a division where you basically are going to try to take out Milwaukee and Chicago.
Yep.
And Milwaukee is a good team, but they've made some moves that may think they may be vulnerable. And we all know the Cubs are a weird organization. And so the Reds could win it. So look at what they did. They saw there's a window of opportunity, and they're making an attempt to at least look their fans and say, we're going for it, folks. We're going to try to win the NL Central. And then if you win the NL Central, are you going to beat the Dodgers? I don't know. But do you know what? No one thought the Diamondbacks were going to beat them in 2023, or the Padres were going to beat them in 2022, or the Nationals were going to beat them in 2019. So sometimes it happens. In order to do that, you have to be in the playoffs. And that's what the Reds are trying to do. And good for ownership for doing that.
And it's interesting that you say that, Sully, because it has been a couple of years that we have been just goading, like just daring ownership to do this, because 2023 was when all, Elly De La Cruz, Matt McClain, when the guys came up and really started to rake. And we're like, oh man, it feels like the Reds have something. They've got a lot of guys on rookie deals. This is the time to go fill the holes through free agency and trades and really build something here. And then they didn't for 2 off seasons. And we were really worried that they were just going to continue with the status quo this off season as well. And then the Suarez thing just absolutely hits us out of nowhere. And I get it. It's a 1-year, $15 million deal. There's not a lot of other teams that are going to be like, wow, congrats on spending that. Like, I get it. I understand that. But it's the thing that was said, and this was from a very respected reporter here in Cincinnati, a guy named Charlie Goldsmith. He wrote about this. He said, according to sources, the Reds do not have to shed any payroll from anywhere else on the roster to make this move with Suarez work. They're doing something that fans have been asking for since 2022, the year that the Reds traded a Eugenio Suarez to Seattle. They're pushing payroll up a notch, investing in the team and spending more aggressively to build a winner. Like you said, spending aggressively doesn't mean they're going to throw $300 million at the free agent market, but they are pushing their payroll total to a point that most Reds fans dared not to dream about, because we're like, we know who we're talking about here. We know we're talking about somebody that's going for the bargain bins and not necessarily somebody who's going for the brand new item. And here we are, and the Reds have done the things that we have asked them to do this offseason. I think it's very clear that they have set themselves up to not have the excuse where if we're in June and they're floundering, we're not going to be sitting around saying, well, see, this team was set up for failure. They're not. They're set up for success, and the expectation is the division.
And think about what that would mean. Last thought, best thought. When you look at the Reds and you look at the fact that there are cities that surround them in the tentacles of reddom, whether it's Columbus, whether it's Dayton, whether it's Louisville, Kentucky, whether it's Indianapolis. You look at there's the tentacles of the Reds. And if a young person is following the Reds and has a year where they get into it, they're first place team, you have dreams of a pennant race going through your head, and they get hooked on the club. Cincinnati is a sleeping giant of a baseball fan market, not only just because of the history of the team and the history. I know that this current Reds team wasn't the original Cincinnati team, that professional team, but they bear the name and they bear the tradition. But also, it's a great sports region that could dip into West Virginia, could dip into Kentucky, can dip into all of that to create a Reds nation. But it's tough to do that if you're not trying. They're trying. And they're doing it in ways like, you're right, they didn't sign a 9-year deal. They're trying to win this year.
Yeah.
And if you get people hooked now and build a team that says, like, hey, we're trying to win this year, come show up to the ballpark, that can go a long way.
It's huge.
Darn it.
I'm so stoked. I can't wait. Pitchers and catchers in, what's it now, 7 days, I think, by the time that this posts. So bring it on. Let's go.
All right, Bob. By the way, thanks so much for tuning in to this Locked On Reds crossover. This week, we are going to be talking about, I'm guessing, when Framber Valdez signs. And I am going to talk about why Carlos Beltran's cheating was okay, but A-Rod's wasn't. So make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On MLB or Locked On Reds so you get all the latest episodes, and follow us at Locked On MLB on Twitter, whatever they're calling it these days. Where they can follow Locked On Reds, where's that?
You can follow it at Locked On Reds everywhere you get your socials, whether it's Twitter or TikTok or Instagram or all the things. We're all over the place.
And also the Everydayer Club. They're built for you. Get Locked On MLB or Locked On Reds, and check out the Discord there, and go to lockedonmlb.supercast.com or Locked On Reds, same handle, and go to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Pockets Network YouTube, and make sure you make Locked On Reds your second listen, unless they're already your first listen. Make me your second listen. I'm going to bring up the trivia question pretty quickly here. We're going to wrap up here. We're going a little long. When the Reds won the World Series in 1975 and 1976, who was their only starting pitcher to finish in the top 5 for the Cy Young Award? The two greatest Reds teams in their history, and only one starting pitcher cracked the top 5 for the Cy Young Award. Put your answer right down here on the YouTubes. Talking to Jeff Carr about the Suarez signing and what that means, and smaller market teams, take advantage of your window of opportunity. You may win some fans over along the way. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Reds crossover. He's Jeff Carr. I'm your pal, Paul Francis Sullivan, but please call me Sully.